I would like to talk about action, absolutely, but I'd also like to talk about international law, because there is now a very long list of international laws and rulings and decisions that are being violated by Marino, by Ecuador, by UK, and by proxy, the US. So we have two UN rulings in favour of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, stating that yes, Julian has been arbitrarily detained, that he must be given safe passage to realise his asylum in Ecuador, and compensated. We have the Inter-American Court on Human Rights decision, which I've had confirmed from WikiLeaks' legal team is a legally binding decision upon Ecuador as a member state. Which again ratifies that Julian is being arbitrarily detained, that he should be released, and that he should be compensated. We have the 1953, I believe, Refugee Convention on Refugees, which guarantees not just that someone shouldn't be executed, but actually preserves their life and their liberty and their human rights. That has been consistently violated throughout the last 8 years. We've also seen when Julian was given diplomatic status by Ecuador after being made an Ecuadorian citizen, that the United Kingdom has refused to respect that diplomatic status, which in itself is yet another violation. So I'd like your commentary, Ray, and also Joe, if you have, I'm sure, 2 cents to put in about this. How is it that so many precedents, so many legal precedents can be completely, abjectly ignored by the West in this situation?
I could tell you because it's happened so many times before with the United States. And just one example, the 2003 invasion of Iraq. There was no UN Security Council resolution authorizing that. The now late Secretary General at the time, Kofi Annan, who died just a few months ago, he was badgered by a BBC interviewer whether the invasion was illegal, and he ultimately said yes. And then the Americans, led by John Bolton, who was the UN ambassador at the time, and I was covering UN headquarters, I was there, made his life hell. And then the oil for food scandal erupted, which really had little to do with Kofi Annan and had to do more with member states. And he paid a big price just for saying that the invasion of Iraq was illegal, which it certainly was. So the U.S., and Ray can expound on this if he wants to, has a long history of ignoring international law when it suits them. I mean, it's a joke. The idea that the U.S. would let international law stop them, and they won't let them. And the U.K. is pretty much the same. And Ecuador seems to be behaving that way as well. I mean, when someone gets political asylum, they have to prove that they are in danger if they go back to the country, or in this case, even go out into the street, because they could be arrested and extradited to the U.S. And that's why the previous government of Ecuador gave him political asylum, because his life was and his freedom was in danger. And once that happens, you can't kick this person out if they're still in danger. And the danger has grown. We know that there are charges against him in the United States. And we know that UK will extradite him. There'll be a fight over that extradition, by the way. People skip over that point. I mean, Julian's lawyers certainly will fight that, maybe in the European Court of Human Rights and at the International Court of Justice, maybe. I mean, they will try to stop that extradition, but the US and Britain seem to have a way, as their history has shown us, of getting their way when it comes to these international legal matters. So he cannot be kicked out. That's against, I believe, international refugee or asylum law, that if there's still a tangible threat to him, and it's greater now than ever, they can't expel him. So international law is a plaything in the hands of American policymakers. It has been forever, and it's not going to stop being here.
Well, I would agree, Joe. It has been pretty much forever, because we are, after all, the sole indispensable country in the world. That makes all other countries, by definition, dispensable, right? We have vassals like the UK. And the UK has a rich history of detaining people without trial. Several of my Irish uncles can tell you about that, okay? And they can tell you about what it's like to be in British captivity, as Julian Assange would inevitably be, as the courts fought about whether he should be allowed out of jail. With respect to international law, well, there was a catalyst of great significance in March of 2003, as Joe mentioned. And that was that we started what Nuremberg Tribunal called a war of aggression. Okay. Now, Nuremberg was very careful, and they said, now, starting a war of aggression is to commit the supreme international crime, differing from other war crimes only insofar as it contains the accumulated evil of the whole. Whoa, accumulated evil. Think torture, think kidnapping, think black prisons, think all that stuff, okay? And it all happened. Now, just to mention torture, Alberto Gonzalez, who was our President Bush's lawyer at the time, he called the Geneva Conventions, the sacrosanct Geneva Conventions going way back before World War II. He said, well, they're sort of obsolete. They're quaint, and you can do whatever you like, Mr. Bush. And so he decided, and this was the result of Gonzalez's and Cheney's recommendation, we will treat detainees humanely, as appropriate, and as consistent with military necessity, period, end quote. That's not what Geneva says. My God. And you know what happened for all that. So I guess what we have to say here is that although there is such a thing as international law, and the United States view might makes right, vassals like the UK will bow and scrape to stay in good odor with the United States. And I've not seen it so bad in all of my years, which actually are longer years than Joe Lauria's.
I'm getting there, Ray. Thanks.